I got a question that is fascinating. A person says, I can see that an engineer would use tools, but hypnosis and dialogue, dot, dot, dot. You know, I thought it was a fascinating question. And yes, hypnosis is a tool that we use to craft a result, and so is dialogue. Now, most people, you say, well, but I talk all day long, and how come I'm not getting those results? Because we're not having the kind of dialogue that we do in therapy. Most people, when they're talking, they're simply waiting for their turn to speak. And for the most part, if you observe people talking, for the most part, they talk over each other, and their conversations are not even necessarily connected. In other words, one person might be saying, yeah, I went to the store yesterday and I got some shoes. And the person saying, yeah, no, because the fishing wasn't so good, whatever. And I may be exaggerating a little, but I've actually seen this and observed this. It's fascinating to watch. They're having two independent monologues. And at the very best, one waits for the other to take a break to interject with something that is totally unrelated to what this person is saying. That's not a dialogue. And there's nothing wrong with that if that entertains you. And if you want to do that, that's perfectly okay. But what I'm saying is that's not a dialogue. A dialogue, by definition, dialogos, right? A dialogue, by definition, is a process of exploration in which both parties are actively seeking a higher truth together. Because look, when you and I simply talk, I have my truth, I have my point of view, and you have yours. So there are two truths here, 2 points of view here. In a dialogos, in a dialogue, what we're seeking is not your truth or my truth, but a higher truth, a truth that is higher than mine or yours. And so we're looking for a higher truth. And there's a specific way in which we conduct the dance of words, the dialogos, the dialogue, to get to the higher truth. And you can always tell when that happens because both parties feel a sense of elation. Ah, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's awesome. There's a sense of pleasure there when we get to the higher truth. I discussed this at length in my book called The Philosophy of Therapy. So if you're interested, not to divert it, but if you're interested, read the book and I discussed that at length in a very didactical way. So dialogue is a very, very effective tool. And we can do a lot with that. And the way we use dialogue in hypnotherapy, it isn't even as an active ingredient to effect change, but it is a tool that we use quite a bit to find what the person actually wants to change. And to say this in another way, we use that to find what the question is, not to look for the answer. The answer we look for in the subconscious mind, and we use another tool called hypnosis to get that answer. But the problem with finding the answer is oftentimes with the question. In other words, if we don't ask the right questions, we have no hope of getting the right answer. So a person might be a skilled hypnotist, but they're not a good therapist. And therefore, we don't know what to do with the person once hypnotized, either prior to hypnosis or during hypnosis or after hypnosis. They know how to hypnotize. So what you need is a good hypnotherapist who knows how to both hypnotize and have deep dialogue. Through that deep dialogue that we also call pre-induction. Why? Because it precedes the hypnotic induction. We're going to be asking the right questions. We're going to be determining what the right questions to ask are. But we're not going to waste time asking the question of your rational mind, because the one thing we know about the rational mind is that it doesn't have the right answer. It has what's called a rationalization or an excuse. So for instance, if I were to ask an obese person, to go back to the example of obesity, so why are you obese? Let's say the person would say, well, because it's in my genes. Well, because my father is obese. That has nothing to do with it, but that's the answer that, in this example, right? I'm not saying everybody says that. That's the answer that mind can produce, whatever is at hand, whatever is easier, whatever they've been hearing all their lives. Oh, it's in your genes. Your father's obese, you're obese, that kind of thing. So suppose that through a process of deep dialogue, we arrive at the right question to ask. And let's just pretend that the right question in this example is, why are you obese? Okay, once I know what the right question is, time to stop the dialogue, go into hypnosis, and ask that question of the subconscious mind. Because if I continue with a pretend dialogue and ask the rational mind, why are you obese? I'm going to hear an answer that is nothing more, nothing less than a rationalization. The mind will always answer the question, but that answer is not, the way that we know it's a rationalization is it's not actionable. In other words, I cannot do anything with that. Oh, my father is obese, therefore I'm obese. Okay, so for you to lose weight, your father has to lose weight. It doesn't make any sense. That answer does not lead to a change in results. So it's a rationalization. It's an excuse. Whereas, in this example, you arrive at the question, why are you obese? You hypnotize the person, you ask the question of their unconscious, why are you obese? And they might say something like, because I'm afraid of dying. Again, I'm making, because I'm afraid of dying. Oh, how does, okay, no, because I feel that if I eat enough, then, I'm strong and I won't die. Okay, you see? And you say, okay, would you be willing to find a different way of preserving your life other than by overeating? Yes. What could you do instead? Well, I can actually learn how to ride a bicycle and exercise. That would be healthy for me and I wouldn't have to overeat. So these answers I'm making up, but the point is that the person will come up with different actions that will produce the intended result other than overeating. And the difference now is that they leave your office and they actually do gladly, long-term, what they want to do, and they create the result. So yeah, deep dialogue and hypnosis are the two primary tools that we use to create massive results for you, whatever you want. So, blessings.